The lights may have dimmed, but the truth refuses to stay buried. D'Angelo's son has broken his silence, unveiling chilling revelations surrounding his father's death, details he believes the music industry tried to hide. Could it be that behind the glitz of fame lurks a powerful force controlling the fate of artists who dare to remain real? The question now echoing across the music world, is this silence a sign of respect or a cover-up? Before we dive into this long-buried truth, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. On the morning of October 14th, 2025, the entire neo-soul community stood still. The sounds of voodoo and Black Messiah flooded social media, not in joy, but in mourning. Fans called it the day the light went out. D'Angelo, the heartbeat of a generation, the soulful heir to Marvin Gaye and the emotional depth of Prince, was gone. The family's announcement was short, calm, and almost too composed. After a prolonged and courageous battle with cancer, Michael D'Angelo Archer has been called home. Those words felt like ice. No breakdown, no chaos, only a heavy, aching silence. They say an artist dies twice, once when the creativity stops and once when life does. But D'Angelo, he never stopped being an artist, even in his final breath. Pancreatic cancer had slowly consumed him. Whispers say he spent his final weeks in hospice, the quiet space where people prepare for their last journey. What no one outside the family knew, every night he still listened to music. He would play Send It On softly, close his eyes, and smile. For him, *** music was faith, ***, the one thing that made death feel gentle. His only son, Michael Archer Roman II, saw it all. In a heart-wrenching post, he shared, "I just sat here watching my daddy die, finally feeling like we were truly rebuilding. He was there when I needed him. After Mama passed, time just ran out." A son who lost his mother 7 months earlier, now forced to lose his father too, just when their bond had begun to heal. The words "time ran out" echoed like a cruel fate. But grief wasn't the only thing left behind. There was mystery. No public warning, no health updates, no interviews, only silence until the news exploded. Fans were stunned. "We had no idea he was sick. Why did no one tell us? Why all the secrecy?" Silence, a word that always followed D'Angelo. He avoided interviews. He stayed off red carpets. He rejected fame's spotlight. But this time, silence felt different. It felt like something was being hidden. Michael Jr. knew it too. In his public statement, he said, "It has been a very rough and sad year. My parents taught me to be strong, and I will honor that." He thanked fans. He stayed calm. He remained respectful. But if you read between the lines, there was pain, there was frustration, there was something he wasn't allowed to say. It wasn't just a son grieving his father. It was someone facing the very industry many believe pushed D'Angelo into isolation years ago. D'Angelo was never the kind of star who craved the spotlight. After voodoo exploded in 2000 and turned him into a global icon, he did something no one expected. He disappeared. No tours, no interviews, no new music. Fans called it the most mysterious disappearance in R&B history. According to those who knew him best, the reason was simple and heartbreaking. The pressure was unbearable. The industry forced him into the role of a soul sex symbol, but he hated it. In one rare interview, he admitted, "They wanted me to be a sex symbol. I just wanted to make music." He wanted to create art, not be a product, but the machine didn't care about art. They cared about image, fame, and profit. That battle slowly broke him. Like someone swimming against a riptide, he kept fighting the very world that once celebrated him. The illness came late in his life, but the exhaustion had begun years earlier. Family members said he lived like a recluse, staying inside, playing piano, composing in silence. He feared cameras. He hated explaining himself, and when sickness struck, he chose silence once again. Michael Jr. grew up inside that silence. He never flaunted his father's fame. He never walked red carpets. There was distance between them, but also a powerful bond, music. Only in recent years, after Angie Stone passed away, did father and son truly reconnect. Friends said D'Angelo looked happier than ever. Then the illness worsened, and time finally ran out. "I know it wasn't done with malicious intent," Michael wrote, "but today I'm not in any state of mind to make any statements. I wasn't planning to." Those words stunned people. It wasn't done with malicious intent. What did that mean? A mistake, a setup, or just something he told himself to cope? That tiny phrase made fans stop and think, did something happen behind the curtain of the music industry? Michael Jr. wasn't trying to start conspiracies. He wasn't blaming anyone, but his honesty, his raw pain, forced the world to look back. How many artists suffered in silence? How many were forgotten? How many stories were erased because they didn't fit the image? In another interview, D'Angelo said something haunting. "I just want to be remembered for the truth in my music. That's all." And it was true. His music was the truth, raw, emotional, unfiltered. It didn't need lights or choreography. It just needed a heart to listen. But maybe that's why he didn't fit the era of formulas and commercial success. Even now, when Spanish Joint or Really Love plays, his voice drifts through the air, gentle, soulful, deeply human. Beautiful, yet tinged with sadness, almost like a warning. As this part of the story ends, it's clear, this is not just about death. This is the beginning of a bigger question. In a world of blinding fame, how many others are being swallowed by the very light they created? Michael Jr. didn't say much. He only asked, "Please keep me in your thoughts." But behind that simple request was the silent cry of an entire generation of artists' children, kids who watched the industry devour their parents. And even if he didn't say it out loud, people understood. Maybe D'Angelo didn't die from illness alone. Maybe he died from the exhaustion of a soul trapped between art and commerce, freedom and expectation, authenticity and fame. The light went out, but in the darkness, a new question ignited. Less than 48 hours after the world said goodbye, something strange happened. A tribute statement flooded major news outlets, labeled as the first official message from his son, Michael Archer Roman II. It was poetic, polished, and perfectly calm. D'Angelo passed peacefully. Surrounded by love, his legacy will live forever in the rhythm of our hearts. It spread like wildfire, but just hours later, Michael Jr. broke the silence again, and this time he didn't hold back. "That statement is false," he said. "I didn't write it, nor did I authorize anyone to speak for me." One sentence, and it hit like lightning. While the world was still grieving, someone had already begun shaping the narrative, using his pain as a press release. Fans were stunned, the media panicked, and in the background, a dangerous question started to burn. Who wrote it? Who had the power to control the story even after D'Angelo was gone? News outlets scrambled to edit their posts, but instead of stopping, they launched a new wave of comfort pieces. One article said, "He's drawing strength from the values his parents gave him." It sounded touching. Until people noticed, another article said the exact same thing. Word for word, drawing strength, resilient, overcoming the same phrases, the same message, the same narrative. Too perfect to be coincidence, too polished to be real. They were building an image of a son who was calm, compliant, grateful. But was that the truth? He had never gone on air, never given an interview. Every word about his grief came from strangers. And when someone speaks for your pain, they reshape your truth. Behind the scenes, independent journalists started hearing whispers. A former record label staff member revealed that before his death, Every employee was ordered to never speak about Dangilo's health. Everything was tightly controlled to avoid misunderstanding. But no one ever explained what misunderstanding. Another reporter said that before the death was even announced, she was told by a media representative, "Don't post anything yet. Wait for the official statement. Everything will be arranged." Arranged? That word sent chills down people's spines. Because if true, it meant his death, or at least the news of it, was managed, calculated, timed. And in a world where every emotion can be edited, even grief must fit the brand. The public felt the contradiction. They were told he died peacefully, but the more they read, the more uneasy it felt. Why did no one know he was sick? Why were there no final photos? And why, immediately after his passing, was there a perfectly scripted PR statement ready to go? Michael Jr. stayed silent, but his silence did not equal agreement. In another message, he simply said, "People will always talk, but what matters is what's true in your heart." A gentle sentence, but inside it was a storm. What if the truth in his heart didn't match the story being told outside? From that moment, people began using a new phrase: the hidden truth. Amidst the controversy, Revolt continued to report with a positive spin, praising how Michael Jr. was finding peace amid the tragedy. While people wrote that he was with family, cherishing the memory of his parents, everything was recounted so beautifully that it ceased to be real. A tragedy had become a perfect media product. A veteran MC who collaborated with Dangilo said on a tribute show, "The industry sells everything, even grief." The statement silenced the audience because in this death, people seemed to see a reflection of the dark side of the music industry, where emotions are edited, memories are cut, and tears must fall at the right moment for the story to conclude perfectly. In that picture, Michael Jr. stood in the middle between a public that wanted to know, a media that wanted to dictate, and a family that wanted privacy. All eyes were on him, but he said no more. A close family friend recounted. "He's grieving, but everyone wants something from him, a quote, a post, a reaction. They want his pain to serve a purpose. They wouldn't let him grieve as a human being. They wanted him to represent, speak out, and be moderately emotional, but he was not a spokesperson. He was a son who lost his father." Day by day, the rumors multiplied. Some claimed the record label knew he had cancer for over a year, but kept it secret so as not to affect the commercial value of licensing deals. Some said the timing of the death announcement was carefully selected so it would not coincide with a major award show because they didn't want to share the spotlight. No one had proof, but those words spread like cracks in a mirror, and once the mirror is cracked, nothing reflects the whole truth anymore. The whispers haven't stopped, and the darkness is still profound. Before the whispers about his death began, Dangilo's life was already a fragmented symphony, high notes of glory interspersed with long, low passages of silence and solitude. He was once called the savior of soul, the soul of a new generation, the one who pulled R&B out of commercialism and returned it to truth and emotion. But the price of that limelight, like other legends, was always too steep. In the late 1990s, when the Brown Sugar album and then Voodoo dominated the charts, Dangilo became a living symbol of music that was both nostalgic and modern. His raspy voice, hazy eyes, and sensual physique made him an icon for an entire generation. But while the audience was captivated by that light, he began to fear it. In a rare interview in 2000, when asked about Voodoo's success, Dangilo merely smiled and said, "After my son was born, I dedicated this album to him. He gave me something to live for and something to write for." That statement was simple, yet it was the deepest truth. Michael Jr. was not just his son. He was the reason Dangilo stepped out of his own shadow, at least for a while. However, that light did not last. After the Voodoo World Tour concluded, he abruptly disappeared. No new albums, no interviews, no appearances. The entire music world was shocked. Rumors spread. He was in crisis. He was disillusioned with the industry. He had succumbed to addiction. He was running away from the world, but no one knew for sure. Close friend Questlove once said, "He was too pure for this business. The spotlight didn't just blind him, it burned him." For nearly a decade, D'Angelo virtually vanished from the music map. No one knew where he was aside from a few blurry paparazzi photos, a heavier figure, tired eyes, slow steps. Many fans called those the silent years. He was once arrested for impaired driving, once underwent rehabilitation treatment, and once rejected every opportunity for a comeback. Not because he couldn't sing, but because he didn't want to. Music was no longer a joy for him, but a burden. He once told a friend, "Every note I play feels like someone's watching." And while everyone awaited a new track, he only heard silence. Throughout those years, the only person he kept in frequent contact with was Angie Stone, his ex-partner, who accompanied him during his early career days. They were no longer lovers, but kindred spirits. She understood him, understood his stage fright, understood that the spotlight was not meant for a soul like D'Angelo. In 2014, after more than a decade of silence, D'Angelo unexpectedly returned with Black Messiah. The album was released quietly with no promotional campaign, no promises. But the music, powerful, dark, authentic, was as if he had poured out everything left in his soul. He said in the only short interview at the time, "This is not about fame, this is survival." That sentence sounded more like despair than triumph. And indeed, after Black Messiah, he virtually disappeared again. No tour, no new music, no explanation. Fans loved him, but also feared he would sink back into the darkness. When Angie Stone died in early 2025, that fear became reality. The news of her passing felt like a knife to D'Angelo's heart. Though they had been apart for years, a deep bond remained between them: music, friendship, and their shared son. A friend in the industry recounted. He stopped talking, just stopped. He'd sit at the piano for hours playing the same chords over and over like he was trying to erase something. Relatives recounted that he began to weaken, losing weight, suffering from insomnia. But no one outside the family knew what he was suffering from. Michael Jr. later wrote on his personal page, "I just sat here watching my daddy die after feeling like it was the first time he and I were truly building." That sentence was what choked the world. The first time father and son were truly building a relationship, and also the last time. The son had just reconnected with his father, only to watch him slowly slip away. From the very beginning, D'Angelo was a person who disliked ostentation. He avoided crowds, hated cameras, and hated having to play himself on stage. In an old interview, he once sighed, "I'm not built for the fame part. I just want to make music and go home." And that was true. When illness knocked, he chose to keep it private. No announcement, no explanation, no pity. Only a few close relatives knew he was battling a dangerous disease. Yet, the strange thing is no one ever saw him at a hospital. Not a single photo, not a single medical report leaked. Everything was kept secret to a perfect degree. The media called it the perfect silence. But perfect silence sometimes makes people fearful, because in that silence, everyone felt that something was being concealed. Occasionally, D'Angelo appeared in a few backstage photos with old friends. His face was thinner, his smile still gentle, but his eyes carried sorrow. He didn't speak much, just nodded, shook hands, and disappeared. A reporter once described their final meeting. He looked like someone who had already said goodbye to the world. Relatives recounted that he spent most of his time at home listening to old recordings, occasionally calling his son, talking about things he hadn't had time to teach. When Angie Stone died, he started rewriting an unfinished track from 1999, a song called "Forever Mine," but it was never completed. All those small signs, looking back now, were a silent farewell that no one recognized. When people look back at D'Angelo's life, everything begins to fit together like pieces of a sad puzzle. A genius who feared the light, a man crushed by the weight of expectation. A father who had just rediscovered kinship before losing everything. And above all, a human being who chose silence over being misunderstood. Perhaps that's why when he passed, that silence still enveloped everything. People said he died peacefully, but no one truly knew what happened in those final months. Michael Jr., though never stating it directly, left a question mark in the hearts of fans, an unanswered question. Was his death merely the end of a natural journey, Or was something else buried deep with the final chord? The past begins to illuminate the present. Every detail, the withdrawal, the silence, the fear of the spotlight, the continuous losses, is no longer random. It creates the feeling that D'Angelo lived in a world where the light itself was what killed him. And so the readers, the listeners, the ones who loved him, all began to believe that behind the death of this legend, there was a bigger secret hidden in his own music, in the notes that will never resonate again. No one denies that the global music industry is a colossal machine. A death, if it happens to a legend, is never just a private family matter. It is a media event, a financial shockwave, and a test for the image of numerous associated brands. Chilling is the feeling that someone planned the manner of his passing, or at least planned how the public would hear about it. From the fake statement, to the bizarre coincidence in the tone of major newspapers, to the way the news was announced late but perfectly curated for the media, everything felt like a flawlessly staged play. Michael J.R. did not name the director, but the readers understood. He was talking about the system itself, the system his father feared his whole life, a system that knows when to turn the light on and when to extinguish it. In the entertainment world, information is not just truth, it is money. An early announcement of an illness could cause the record label's stock to plummet, tours to be canceled, and brands to withdraw contracts. A late announcement, conversely, can turn a loss into a focal point, even boosting digital music sales, streams, and album reissues. With D'Angelo, who had licensing and distribution contracts worth tens of millions of dollars, information management was inevitable. Some observers suggest that his death, if kept secret for a few days before the announcement, may have been carefully considered to align with the time of least media competition. No one can prove it, but the history of the music industry has seen similar cases: delayed death announcements, suppressed medical records, and press conferences written out like scripts, all aiming to serve the same objective: protecting the commercial image. Before D'Angelo, many artists fell into a similar vortex. Whitney Houston, Amy Winehouse, Prince, Michael Jackson, each passed away under different circumstances, but the common thread is the public was always informed late. Information always came after, meticulously edited before appearing. A death in the music world is never just a death. It is a meticulously planned media campaign, a delicately toned announcement event, an opportunity for the deceased's brand to resurrect. People began to ask themselves, would D'Angelo, who hated ostentation his whole life, agree to have his death controlled in that way? And if not, who made the decision for him? From the moment he denied the fake statement, Michael J.R. became the center of attention. Major news agencies sought contact, but he refused. When revolt and people continued to write articles reassuring the public, he posted a cryptic line: "You can't control what people feel when they finally start asking questions." A short sentence like a challenge. It does not blame, but it also does not permit anyone to distort the story. Michael J.R. clearly understands the power of truth and the power of silence. But this time, he would not accept being turned into a side character in the public calming campaign. He did not scream, did not give interviews, did not cry before the camera. Instead, he chose true silence, a disobedient silence. An industry expert once said, "Artists die, contracts live." That is the cruelest truth of show business. When an artist signs dozens of clauses binding copyrights, image, and brand, they are no longer a person but a product with an expiration date. If that product is nearing its end, the company will choose the most appropriate time to announce it. There are rumors that before D'Angelo's death, the record label was negotiating the reissue of Voodoo for its 25th anniversary. An early announcement of the illness could have stalled the project. If that is true, then keeping his health secret was no longer a private matter, but a business strategy. To date, no one has evidence that anyone in the music industry deliberately concealed his illness or delayed the announcement of his death. Everything remains speculation, but that speculation is not baseless. It stems from the gaps between grief and truth, between love and profit. The music industry, to some extent, is a matrix. It devours authentic individuals and returns their images in the most digestible form. D'Angelo, with his private nature, lived against the current throughout his career, and his death tragically also continued to defy media logic. His death was quiet, without a stage, without public tears. Yet afterward, it was recounted in hundreds of articles, videos, and hashtags, as if someone was trying to complete the unfinished story. That is precisely what makes people increasingly believe in an invisible hand, an unnamed power capable of orchestrating events even after an artist has passed. Michael J.R. knows he cannot win alone, but he can make people listen. He began to ask questions not with anger, but with sobriety. If they can bury the truth with the artist, how many stories have we already lost? That question is not just for his father. It is for every legend who passed away in silence, for every artist suffocated by their own image, for every creative soul turned into a brand. That is the climax of the story, where the image of a secret music industry emerges with a thick curtain covering everything: information, memories, even death. But in that darkness, the small light of a sun still shines, not for revenge, but to preserve the last bit of truth for his father. Michael J.R. offered his sincere gratitude to the fans, friends, colleagues who attended, and artists who were deeply influenced by D'Angelo. He spoke of his father with a voice that was both proud and pained, an artist who only knew how to love music his whole life. A man who never knew how to protect himself from the outside world. Thank you for loving him even when he disappeared. He felt that. I know he did. Many must have cried, not because D'Angelo passed, but because for the first time they understood that behind the legend was a human being, fragile, solitary, and too real to survive long in a world built on illusion. Michael J.R. recounted that throughout his childhood, both his mother and father taught him the same thing: be strong, but don't lose your kindness. Now, with both gone, he repeated that sentence like a promise. They both taught me strength, he wrote on his personal page. I'll carry that even on the days when it feels impossible. He couldn't hide his fatigue. 1 year, 2 losses. But instead of sinking into sorrow, he transformed it into a form of quiet bravery, not ostentatious courage, but the kind that survives in silence. But there is a certain resilience in those who know that life will never return what was lost, yet they keep moving forward. A few months ago, when Angie Stone, his mother, passed away, Michael J.R. posted a single line on Instagram. A message unpolished, unconventional, but profoundly real. I ain't want nothing, just wanted to say I love you. You never failed me ever, ever. I hope to one day be as good to my kids as you were to me. Long live you forever. It wasn't a farewell. It was the trembling voice of a son trying to call his mother one last time. People read it and felt the love, the ache, the unfillable loneliness. And when he spoke of his father, Michael J.R. used the same tone, not the voice of a celebrity, but of an ordinary man trying to find meaning in loss. He didn't attack anyone directly, but every word carried a deeper message. He spoke of silence, not the silence of grief, but intentional silence. A silence used to protect image, maintain peace, prevent panic. They call it respect, he said, but sometimes respect feels a lot like control. The music industry had once taken his father. It had swallowed his mother, and with only him remaining, he chose not to stay silent any longer. He called upon music lovers, journalists, sincere fans, don't let the story end with rest in peace. Ask, listen, remember. Because if this generation stays silent, the next will never know the truth behind the people they worship. And if small voices like his are ignored, how many other stories, how many other souls will the industry bury beneath the glossy layers of fame? No one knows if Michael J.R. will continue to speak. Maybe he will disappear from the spotlight like his father. Maybe he will write a book. Maybe he will quietly guard D'Angelo's legacy. But one thing is certain. He did what few dared. He asked the question, if the world can rewrite his story, what's stopping them from rewriting yours? That question echoes in the minds of everyone who hears it. There is no answer, only a lingering doubt. Because sometimes the truth is not in what is spoken, but in what people choose not to say. Was the industry's silence truly respect, or just a curtain hiding something far bigger? And so the story ends, not with closure, but with awakening. The truth may still be hidden, but at least a son stood up, spoke out, and refused to let memory die. Some stories end with tears, some end with silence. But the story of D'Angelo and the son who spoke for his father ends with an echo. An echo that refuses to fade, refuses to be buried beneath media headlines, refuses to be dressed in polished statements. D'Angelo spent his whole life chasing truth through music. He didn't need glamour. He didn't need fame. He only needed honesty, even when honesty made others uncomfortable. Maybe that very honesty made him unfit for a world built on illusion. But his greatest legacy wasn't just legendary songs. It was a spirit that refused to bow to silence. Michael Jr., in the moment of losing both parents, chose to continue that spirit. He chose to fight not with tears but with questions, not to accuse but to force the world to think. He understands truth doesn't need a stage, it just needs someone brave enough to chase it, even in silence. If you stay quiet long enough, they'll write your story for you. That warning is not just for the industry, but for all of us, the consumers, the fans, and sometimes the forgetters. We see the spotlight, but not the shadows behind it. We hear the melody, but miss the pain between the lyrics. We mourn the legend, but rarely ask who is allowed to tell their story. Maybe the truth will never be fully known. Maybe the secrets around D'Angelo's death will remain buried. But what matters is this: we heard the voice of a son brave enough to break the silence. He reminds us, memories should not be rewritten, grief should not be edited to look prettier. Behind every legend, there is a human being fragile, solitary but fiercely authentic. D'Angelo was proof of that. And no matter how many glossy layers the world paints over his legacy, those who have truly listened to his music, who have felt his soul in every note, know he never really left. Because music is immortal, and truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds a way to resonate. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told honestly, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Join us in the pursuit of the truth that never sleeps.